So we've covered your personal foundation. That's the most important thing. What you think, what you believe, how you understand your own mind is at the core when you're trying to create change in the world. The thing I'm going to talk about now is a closed second. It's interconnected to your foundation, but it's also a separate way of experiencing the world. And that is listening. And before you go, oh, I've heard about listening and I know what listening is, I'm here to say you don't and you suck at listening. And I do too. Generally, as humans, we suck at listening, and all you have to do is to look out at the world and observe. Observe how many times we get things wrong. Observe how many times we create conflict. Observe how many misunderstandings there are. Look at how many times there's different realities fighting against each other. Observe how many times we're not able to find common ground. Just look at your own life and look at what is happening in the world, and you'll see how bad we are at listening. And let me redefine listening for you too, because you might have heard about active listening. You might have heard different strategies of how to listen in order to remember something, or how to listen in order to understand someone, or to build rapport, or to get them to do what you want them to do. I want to redefine listening as from something that has to do anything to do with your ears to something that has to do with perception itself. In order to do this, I'm going to create a little continuum for you, okay? And it's going to go from being the most horrible listener in the world to the best listener in the world. I'm going to explain what's at each end of this and how we can come closer to this end of it. So the first, being a horrible listener, is very obvious. You feel it, you know it, everyone else knows how it feels. To me, it's when people are talking to me and I'm not really there. Or things are happening, but I'm completely somewhere else in my mind. I'm just not present to what is going on. That is obvious, we all know it, we all like, oh, I wish I did less of that. But it's not really a big problem because it's so visible for us. We can adjust, we can do something about it, we can point it out to each other. It's obvious. Everyone kind of agrees at this level of listening. A little trickier way of listening is when you're paying attention, but your mind is busy. You're doing things. You are maybe comparing a little bit. You're running through your own mind's example of what's being said. You're thinking if you're agreeing or disagreeing. You are having an active mind that's kind of creating this filter between you and the person or what is actually happening in front of you. And this is a little bit tricky because it's hard to notice because it's so unconscious. We all do it all the time. Our mind is kind of running and providing us with thoughts all the time. So it's a little bit tricky because it seems like we're a really good listener because like, I hear what you said, or I know what's really going on, and you might be able to say it back, you might be able to really connect, but there's still so much things that you are missing at this level. All right, I'm gonna take it one step further, and at this level, closer to being a better listener is when you are forgetting more about your thoughts. You're there with the person more. You don't really pay attention so much to what's running through your mind. This is where empathy kicks in. You are able to understand their version of reality. You have more respect for what's going on. You let go a little bit about what your reality is telling you, and you get curious about them. This level of listening is amazing. If the world just did this, the world would change. We would have so much more collaboration, and we would be able to solve so many more problems because we were just open to other people's realities. So this level is still amazing, but as they say in all the cheesy sales videos, but wait, there's more. there's something beyond this, believe it or not. And even further beyond this you have a way of listening that is void of yourself. You become what is happening. You listen to the other person as if you were them. You can see it from their perspective as if it's happening to you. So when they share an opinion or share something that's happening, you're able to see it, understand it, and have no judgment about it, because in a way, you're them when you're listening to it. You're not looking at it from a perspective of yourself, perceiving them. You've become them. This is rare. I'm amazed when I'm able to take things in from this level, because I'm able to understand them in a completely different way. I'm able to connect with people who are completely opposite and who, when I'm bringing myself to equation, I might disagree with. But when I listen to this, I become them. I understand them. And when they go back to really building a relationship, it's easy because I get them. I understand them. If this changed the world, this really, really changed the world. Now, at the final level, you have to kind of go with me a little bit, because it starts to get a little bit metaphysical. It starts to become profound, unexplainable, and unknown. This is a state of being that you've heard people talk about throughout the years. It's a state of pure presence. It's a state where the story of you disappears, the story of them disappears, and you're just there. There's not a filter between you and what's happening. Everything seems like one. This is when people talk about oneness, or a sense of being at one with everything, or a sense of just having an energy flow that isn't separate. It's more real in a way. If you think about it, that's really reality. Everything else is a story, which is why listening is so powerful and so important. And that's why we talk about it again and again and again, because everything up until this point is a continuum of stories. It's a continuum of thoughts. It's disconnected from reality as it is. And we are creating our worlds based on these stories, not based on how the world really is. So looking at this continuum, you might go, wow, I'm definitely not living here 100%, but I'm also maybe not here all the time either. We're all kind of day to day, we might do this. Week to week, we might do this. But when going through this course, or when trying to create change, you want to have a feel for how much filtering you're doing. If you're really there, if you're really present, and if you're not, you'll have an internal alarm bell telling you. And all you would know is that you're doing something in your mind. You're creating something that isn't there. You're adding a story and a filter to what's happening. And if you do that, you'll discover that this keeps the world as it is. This aligns you with reality and allows you to see solutions, see creative ways to go beyond the status quo, to see things that are invisible at the lower levels of listening. So I hope I made the case for the power of letting go of the stories, letting go of what's really on our minds, that it enables us to meet the world in a purer way. And why this is important, I'll give you some examples at different levels, okay? For you, it's extremely important, because if you think about it, we're always listening to ourselves. So what you are taking seriously, just in your own little bubble, listening to something beyond what is occurring in your mind, listening to something before your reality, becomes a way of paying attention to your mind that's completely different. I used to just think I had to listen to everything that came to my mind, and I thought I had to act on it, which sounds crazy now that I say it, it totally changed my life when I realized I don't have to pay attention. I don't have to listen to that. I can ignore it. It can go from foreground, kind of captivating circus, to something that's in the back of my mind and I don't really pay attention to. And every time I put it at the back of my mind, I can be more with what is. I can experience my 2-year-old, my wife, the problems of the world with more purity, okay? The other part where it's extremely applicable is, like I explained, in dealing with other people. It's really at the, it's so important. I just can't stress enough how important it is that, like, if you want to try to create change in the world, if you want to try to do something positive, you're going to have to come across people. And if you can't listen to them, or if you don't understand that they're listening and from their reality, from their filter, you're going to do this. If you understand how to listen and how to open up listening in them, this is going to happen. It's going to be integration. So it's so important when dealing with yourself and dealing with other people. But the thing that I'm most excited about is that if you just look at anything you're up against from a perspective of being able to listen. So if you're trying to solve the issue of climate change or climate crisis, think about that problem and place it somewhere on the continuum, okay? You know that if you're here and you're trying to solve climate issues, a certain level of ideas, a certain level of problem solving, a certain level of being with that problem and engaging with the world is going to come out. If you're here, it's going to be even worse. If you're here, that's close to genius. Like, you have access to information that's, in a way, before space and time. It's like where people see something that could solve everything. This is where the great aha moments come from. This is where everything new comes from. This is where innovation comes from. So if you're trying to solve the climate crisis from this way of listening, everything gets accelerated. Everything gets easier. Everything gets more leveraged from this here. So whether you are trying to help yourself, engage with someone in front of you, or change the entire bloody world, listening is the most important thing.